Welcome to my channel Worldwise. What's something people don't know about the capture of Saddam Hussein? In the chaos of war, it wasn't a satellite or a secret weapon that led to Saddam Hussein's capture. It was a simple Iraqi dish. Masgouf, a grilled carp beloved by Saddam, became the unlikely clue that broke the case wide open. American forces, frustrated by months of fruitless searching, realized that understanding a fugitive's habits could be more powerful than any technology. The trail to Saddam's spider hole began not with a military breakthrough, but with the aroma of grilled fish, a reminder that even the most powerful are creatures of habit. Sometimes history turns on the smallest details. The hunt for Saddam Hussein began the very moment the first American boots hit the ground in Iraq in 2003. As the world watched the invasion unfold on live television, the US and its allies launched a relentless pursuit for the man who had ruled Iraq with an iron fist for decades. Saddam was not just a political target, he was the symbol of a regime the coalition was determined to dismantle. As bombs rained down on Baghdad and chaos erupted in the streets, Saddam seemed to vanish into thin air. He became the central target for the coalition, slipping away just as the world's most powerful military closed in. The city was in turmoil, and every explosion seemed to erase another clue to his whereabouts. Operation Red Dawn was set in motion, mobilizing thousands of soldiers, elite special forces, and CIA operatives. The infamous Most Wanted playing cards were distributed, with Saddam's face as the ace of spades, a constant reminder of the mission's ultimate goal. Every raid, every search, every whispered tip was a step closer to finding him. The US government offered a staggering $25 million bounty for information leading to Saddam's capture. The promise of riches tempted many to betray him, just as similar rewards had led to the deaths of his sons, Uday and Qusay. The stakes were life and death, and trust was a rare commodity. Yet despite the pressure and the promise of fortune, Saddam remained a ghost. He was shielded by a web of tribal loyalties, old friendships, and a deep-seated paranoia. He never slept in the same place twice, always moving, always watching, trusting only a handful of loyalists. The US military unleashed its full arsenal of technology, drones, satellites, and surveillance teams, scouring the Iraqi landscape for any sign of the fugitive dictator. But despite their overwhelming force and resources, they were repeatedly outmaneuvered by one man's cunning and ability to disappear without a trace. The manhunt for Saddam became a global spectacle, a symbol of the limits of military power and intelligence. Frustration grew as months passed with no breakthrough, and the world began to question whether he would ever be found. It was clear that brute force alone would not be enough. As the search dragged on, the strategy had to evolve. Intelligence analysts pored over new leads, soldiers regrouped, and covert agents prepared for a different kind of hunt. The pursuit of Saddam Hussein was about to enter a new phase, one that would test the limits of patience, ingenuity, and resolve. Months passed with little progress. Tips poured in, but fear and loyalty kept Saddam's location secret. The insurgency grew bolder, fueled by rumors of his survival. Each failed raid deepened frustration and doubt. Then, a breakthrough and audio tape surfaced, Saddam's voice mourning his sons. It was proof he was alive, and a mistake that reignited the hunt. The bounty rose to $30 million, with US citizenship offered for information. But Saddam wasn't hiding among generals. He relied on a tight circle from Tikrit, bound by family and tribe. The Americans realized they needed to stop chasing the regime's elite and start looking at the people who cooked his meals and drove his cars. The search shifted from power to proximity. Enter Sergeant Eric Maddox, a US Army interrogator who believed brute force was failing. Maddox argued for detective work map Saddam's social network from the bottom up. He focused on bodyguards, drivers, and cooks, those who knew Saddam's habits and came from his tribe. Through hundreds of interrogations, Maddox's team built a web of relationships, not just a list of suspects. The breakthrough came when they zeroed in on loyal families from Tikrit, cross-referencing names and connections. Suddenly the hunt was personal and focused, driven by human intelligence, not just military might. They weren't chasing a ghost anymore, they had faces and names. The final act was set. During an interrogation, a former palace servant revealed Saddam's love for Masgouf. Maddox connected this to intelligence about Mohammed Ibrahim Omar al-Muslit, Saddam's trusted bodyguard whose family owned a fish farm. If Saddam wanted Masgouf while in hiding, Omar could provide it, fresh, safe, and discreet. This culinary detail became a lead find Omar, and you might find Saddam. The search narrowed to tracking Omar, the man who could satisfy Saddam's craving and manage his movements. The hunt was now about a fisherman, a favorite meal, and a dictator's last comfort. Sometimes the smallest clue is the key. With Omar as the focus, the task force followed leads from fish farms to Baghdad's crowded streets. Omar was elusive, but relentless raids and interrogations closed in. In December 2003, a tip led to his capture in Baghdad. At first, Omar resisted, but appeals to his family's safety broke his silence. He pointed to a farmhouse near Tikrit, describing a hidden underground chamber, a spider hole. The information was precise and credible. The hunt for Saddam was over, only the capture remained. The final location was set. On December 13, 2003, after months of relentless searching, U.S. forces launched their final, decisive raid. Acting on a tip, they converged on two isolated farmhouses just outside Tikrit, Saddam Hussein's hometown and a region long loyal to him. The operation was shrouded in secrecy, with helicopters circling overhead and armored vehicles blocking every escape route. Soldiers moved swiftly, determined to leave no stone unturned in their hunt for Iraq's most wanted man. The initial search of the farmhouses turned up nothing unusual, but the soldiers, guided by intelligence from an informant named Omar, pressed on. In a dimly lit room, they noticed a worn rug that seemed oddly out of place. Lifting it, they discovered a small, concealed opening in the dirt floor, just as Omar had described. Beneath the rug, a styrofoam plug sealed a narrow shaft. The soldiers called into the darkness, their voices echoing in the cramped space below. Suddenly, a disheveled, bearded man appeared, blinking in the harsh light. Saddam Hussein himself, the man who had ruled Iraq with an iron fist for decades. He surrendered without resistance, his hands raised in defeat. In a quiet, almost defiant voice he declared, "My name is Saddam Hussein. I am the president of Iraq." The soldiers quickly secured him, ending months of uncertainty and fear for many Iraqis. The spider hole itself was shockingly primitive, a cramped earthen chamber barely large enough for a man to lie down. Inside there was little more than a small ventilation fan, a few supplies and bundles of cash. It was a stark contrast to the palaces Saddam once inhabited. Saddam, once the most powerful man in Iraq, was pulled from the ground looking defeated, bewildered, and utterly transformed from the leader he once was. The world watched as the former dictator was led away by American soldiers, his reign finally over. News of his capture spread like wildfire, broadcast on television screens around the globe. For many, it was a moment of shock and relief, marking the symbolic end of an era of fear and oppression in Iraq. The Ace of Spades, the most wanted man in Iraq, had finally been found, bringing closure to one of the most intense manhunts in modern history. Saddam's capture in December 2003 was hailed around the world as a pivotal moment in the Iraq War, a symbol of justice, victory, and the hope for a new era. In Baghdad, people poured into the streets, celebrating what many believed was the end of a dark chapter. For coalition forces, it was a hard-won triumph, the result of months of relentless searching and intelligence work. News outlets flashed images of a disheveled Saddam, pulled from a hidden underground bunker, and for a brief moment, it seemed as if Iraq's future might finally be brighter. Yet as soldiers combed through his hideouts, they found no trace of the weapons of mass destruction that had been used to justify the invasion. The absence of these weapons raised uncomfortable questions and cast a long shadow over the war's legitimacy, fueling debate both in Iraq and abroad. Saddam was put on trial for crimes against humanity, facing charges for the brutal repression of his own people. The world watched as he appeared in court, often defiant and unrepentant, challenging the authority of the new Iraqi government. The trial was a landmark event, broadcast globally, and it became a symbol of Iraq's attempt to reckon with its violent past. Ultimately, Saddam was found guilty and sentenced to death by hanging. His execution in 2006 brought a sense of closure for some Iraqis, who saw justice served at last, but for others, it deepened the country's divisions, sparking protests, mourning, and even violence. The wounds of dictatorship and war were far from healed, and the nation remained deeply fractured. In the aftermath, the insurgency only intensified. The power vacuum left by Saddam's fall unleashed years of chaos, sectarian violence, and the rise of extremist groups that would haunt Iraq for generations. The dream of a peaceful, unified Iraq seemed more distant than ever. The legacy of Saddam's capture is deeply complex. While a tyrant was removed from power, the promise of peace and stability remained elusive. Iraqis were left to grapple with the ruins of their past and the uncertainty of their future. And yet, amid the turmoil, life continued. Families gathered to share meals like the simple grilled fish, Masgouf, that played a surprising role in Saddam's capture. These small, everyday moments remind us that history is shaped not only by grand strategies and powerful leaders, but also by the quiet resilience and traditions of ordinary people. Sometimes it's the smallest clue, a forgotten meal, a tiny detail, that can change the course of history, leaving an impact that echoes for years to come. My next video is up now. Watch it.